Here, this is what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Rick, mouthpieces, paper, petitions, bouncing, sings and singing, songs and singing will not eliminate the corrupt government and their agencies.
It won't
Yeah,
tomorrow.
not tomorrow.
I believe that it does win the
Mhm.
war in the end. I mean, I've studied the civil rights movement in the United States at great length. I realized what a long battle it was. It was a 100-year battle, 100-year struggle. And it took a lot of lawsuits and a lot of protests. And when Dr. King was leading it, it was a peaceful movement. They
Mhm.
took beatings in the street. They could have fought back. They could have punched a cop. They could have pulled a gun. They could have showed up armed. They could have, tried to coup the state government or the federal government when they marched on Washington. The March on Washington in 1963, John F. Kennedy, right here, he was very concerned about letting that march happen. He wanted it to happen, but he was concerned that if it escalated, like these people might literally pull a January 6th, that they might
Mhm.
storm the federal government and try to overthrow the government by use of force. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of coordination between Washington, Dr. King, and the organizers of that march to make sure that it was peaceful. And President Kennedy made sure it was televised. And, it was a beautiful moment in American history and it stayed peaceful. And because of that march, within the year, we finally got a Civil Rights Act, followed by several more Civil Rights Acts
Mhm.
that rectified, I think legally anyhow, most of the sins of the past and made America a fairer place for everybody to live. I still stand by my assertion that this is a civil rights struggle, what we're going through with the COVID vaccines and the discrimination. There's lots of other things that you could mix in with it. That's kind of my concern when I see groups trying to mix in a lot of different subjects with the vaccine mandates. That's where it gets confused and people get confused. You got to have a clear mission and stick to it and stay peaceful, and you will win. I guarantee you that
Yeah.
you can win being peaceful.
When I see messages like I've seen over the last 3 days, people saying things like, when have people ever regained their freedom without bloodshed? It really concerns me.
Well, there is bloodshed in a peaceful struggle. I mean, we're the ones getting the peaceful
Eaten.
ones always take it on the chin from the cops.
Yeah.
It's our skulls that get busted by the police.
Yep.
We get pepper sprayed.
Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely blood and it's ours, and that's the sacrifice of, peaceful nonviolent resistance. You
Mhm.
can expect to get arrested if you do civil disobedience peacefully. You can expect that the cops are going to react the way they did in Ottawa, or worse, the way they did in Birmingham, Alabama back in the 60s when Bull Connor sicked those dogs on people and used fire hoses on them and billy clubs.
Mhm. And that's the other thing that the other part of the message I wanted to share with people or convey is that we are at war. There's no question about it. We are engaged in a form of warfare, but it's a new form of warfare. And a big part of that is the information war, which we are part of right here. But it's even a new kind of information warfare, which I am sort of trying to navigate um, and find my way with as a journalist here because it's all very, very new because of the technology. People need to keep that in their sights as well. And that's also why I firmly believe that we can prevail as freedom fighters, as people who want a free and democratic society back again. Um, we can prevail because I think we can win this new kind of war without bloodshed.
I do too.
This thing right here, this pen, it really is, and more accurately, this keyboard, it's more powerful than the sword, folks. That's why they bombed the hotel where the journalists were staying.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why they did that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the journalists that were in that hotel, like you saw the RT guy. And, you know, like we've talked about before, when you see news reports on the mainstream media about the war, most of those journalists are at a hotel in Kiev, nice and comfy, with air conditioning and Wi-Fi, and they get press releases and statements from the Ukrainian government, and they pretty much print those without question. They're far from the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the journalists, the vast majority in Donetsk, in Donbass, in Luhansk, they tend to support Russia. Many of them are Russian journalists or those who live in that region. So yeah, they were definitely targeted. Also,
100%.
like the RT reporter said in Eva's video, there was a funeral right next door, and I cannot think of the colonel's name. It's a female colonel in the DPR, and I'm blanking on her name, but she was killed by Ukrainian bombs, or I should say American bombs, fired by the Ukrainians. And they were having her funeral literally, I think, right across the street from the hotel where the journalists were. They were there to cover the funeral. And that's when all hell broke loose.